Today we finish our journey on what it means to be PC. Not politically correct, but indeed a progressive church. A progressive United Methodist Church, that's what we are. This has all come about after we participated in some strategic planning. A team made up of folks who have been here a long time and new people. And what they did is they put together a recommendation for where we believe God is calling us forth. They looked at different whatever those surveys that you guys took. They looked at different conversations with different people in the community, and this is what we came up with. So these are the things that they believe we need to look into as we move forward in the future. First of all is, how do we continue to live as community? How do we continue to live as community? It is hard to create community in this space. And we want to commit to finding a way to share in community, to get to know one another and experience the love of God in between one another. So not only will we engage in fellowship and programming opportunities, but also seek to make really true life-meaning connections together as well. Another highlight for everybody, surveys and conversations, is outreach. You really appreciate the outreach opportunities that we have here at the Garden. What the team recommended in the year to come, and this is actually going to happen, is we will participate with less groups, give a little more money, and then intentionally build relationships with that group throughout the time that we are together. So instead of just inviting folks, handing a check, and giving some little gifts, we're going to intentionally build relationships with those groups. Another thing we've been looking at is attendance. We realize that life is changing, and the first service in particular is smaller than it has been in the past. And we need to figure out things around attendance. Also need to look more online. We also need to consider not only meeting here at the theater, but is God calling us to look at other venues as well, to explore if there's other opportunities to share a progressive message. I'm very proud of the GLT, who took financial resources from the Wonderful Garden Transitional Campaign and have invested in a group called Smallbox, which is actually very near our offices. That group is going to explore, again, how it is that we are not only living into our message, but how are we sharing that with the world? And we look forward to those adventures. So last week we looked at the first 4 points of what it means to be a progressive community. I encourage you to go to progressivechristianity.org. That's where a lot of different progressive Christians meet to share in conversation, and actually a group put together these 8 points. We looked at the first 4 last week. We're going to look at the second 4 this week. This is one of those messages where we're going to talk a little, sit down. We're going to have some music feed us a little, and I'll come back on 2 different occasions. So just backing up, last week we talked about what are our guiding scriptures for the All of Life. It's a big book. And what are the guiding scriptures that work for us? And these are the ones that I use to center my life. When Jesus comes out of the desert, has just encountered the devil, he says this in Luke 4. He says, "Why am I here? I am here to bring good news to the poor, proclaim release to the captives, sight to the blind, and set the oppressed free." When I look into the news and I look at what's happening in the world, we need to follow Jesus on that path, because we still have these challenges in the world, and he has left us to find a way to continue to bring good news to folks in tough situations. Another thing I recognize is, well, what is my role? What does God call me to do in the midst of this? Well, I think that Micah 6:8, the prophet, says, we are called to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with God. And then Matthew 22, this is where Jesus is asked, but what's most important? And Jesus says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Those are my cliff notes on the love of God as found in Jesus Christ. Yours may be different. I encourage you to go through and figure it out. Why are you here? And how is it that God's calling you forth? You're more than welcome to share in those and consider how those fit into your life. But I think God's speaking to us through that guide. Remember, we talked about that last week. The first point for a progressive Christian church is this. We believe that following the path and teachings of Jesus can lead to an awareness and experience of the sacredness and the oneness of unity of all life. So in other words, we as Christians come to the table with other people, recognizing that God works in this world in a variety of different ways. And unless we come to that table willing to share in the conversation, the Spirit of God probably isn't going to go to work. So we recognize that. The second point is we affirm the teachings of Jesus and that they provide one of many ways to experience the sacredness and oneness of life. And that we can draw from diverse sources of wisdom in our spiritual journey. So what does that mean? Traditionally, there are some Christian traditions where it is my job to change you. We believe that Jesus has called us as Christians to change other people. And if that's with love, I say yes. If you can change somebody who's not loving. But we recognize that there is a diverse world and we learn more and more about it on a regular basis. And again, we come to the table sharing the gospel of love. But oftentimes we'll have to hear the Buddhist presentation or the Buddhist point of view. And what we talked about last week, remember, is how a lot of the teachings hold a lot in common. The third thing we do as a progressive United Methodist Church is we seek community that is inclusive of all people, including, but not limited to, conventional Christians and questioning skeptics, conservatives, liberals, progressives. It doesn't matter where you call yourself on the Christian line, you are welcome here. Believers and agnostic, women and men, those of all sexual orientations and gender identities, those of all classes and abilities. Finally, the fourth point last week was we know that the way we behave towards one another is the fullest expression of what we believe because everybody needs and wants love.
So I know we have a number of folks that are great recyclers of their bulletins. And this week I'm going to encourage you not to recycle your bulletin, but to take it with you. First of all, it has those 8 points of what we believe that we're called to be as a church. And really, I would like you to consider if you can sign on to those points or even add to or take away. The only way they really work is if we grasp them. And then the other thing that is on our bulletin week after week, on the front cover is our mission, our vision, and our values. So go ahead and take a look at that. What's interesting to me is we had this mission and vision long before we ever identified ourselves as a progressive Christian church, and it seems to me that all of these things seem to work together pretty well. So moving on, we have points 5, 6, and 7 we're going to look at in this section. Point number 5 is we find grace in the search for understanding and believe there is more value in questioning than in absolutes. In Paul's letter to the Hebrews, the 4th chapter, he writes that we are to step boldly to God or God's throne where we can find mercy and grace to help when we need it most. So I love that image. I love the image of when you're not sure where you're going on this journey, well, just go to God and I guess God's throne or God's seat. And when you make it to that seat, you're going to be smashed with grace. And it works really beautifully because grace is central to what it means to be a United Methodist. Wesley was all about God's grace that's undeserved, a gift of unmerited favor that God bestows upon all of us and God bestows upon this earth. Progressive Christians are called to live in grace. Not only that, but we're willing to live into the questions as well and to experiment in life. I love the second part of that is that we are questioning. And we recognize that perhaps there are no absolutes that are right here for us to capture. If you have ever been in a group with me or ever part of a new group that's forming, I am a big fan of experiments. I think experimenting is really, really important. And even more important are some failures. See, failure teaches us how to get up again and teaches us what we can do differently. So I encourage us in all of our programming and in everything we're going to do to try something and to do so boldly with love, and let's see what happens. We're trying a few of those things this summer. On July 22nd, we're going to have a big party with a live band following service in Broad Ripple in their parking lot, just to see what does the Spirit bring, and then talk a little bit about how you can be engaged in the fall and in things to come. So that really fits us because we live under grace and we're willing to question. The sixth point is we strive for peace and justice among all people. If you look at our core values, our number one core value is social justice. Social justice. We believe that no one has more value in this world than anyone else. Doesn't matter how much money or education you have. Doesn't matter how much knowledge you have. That we are all in this world together. And we are all called and have value because of a God who loves us all. Yesterday, a number of us had the opportunity to participate in the Pride Parade. Remember, we were going to meet downtown and do what we could to share some love. Well, it just so happened that the annual conference was last week as well, and they were handing out water to people on the street that said, "You are loved," and it just so happened that they had like 500 bottles left over. So they were brought over to the church, over to Roberts Park, and not only were we able to be present there and to share our love with people just by being present, but because of the annual conference, we were able to hand out water that says, "You are loved." Now, what was amazing to me about this is people are not used to somebody just giving them a little love. People were like, "Oh, how much? How much?" And time again, "How much?" "No, it's free. Go ahead, take the water." People were so touched by that. Why? Because the church in this community does not have a very good reputation. The church has told this community of people that we believe their lifestyle is inconsistent with what Jesus taught me. Well, I don't see anywhere in the Bible where Jesus says that it is incompatible with Christian teaching. I don't even know what the Greek for that would be. What Jesus does say is to love your neighbor as yourself. What Jesus does say is to love people and give them water. People who are dressed in odd ways that you would never dress yourself. People in G-strings, and you know what? You hand somebody some water and start a conversation. I think the call is clear. We are baptized into a ministry of "You Are Loved" water. How about that? It was really powerful, and I just want to give a shout out for those in this congregation who participated in that. Dana and June walked on behalf of Eskenazi. The Butchers were there on behalf of their son who passed away this last year, who worked for Lily. We ran into all kinds of amazing people. Give me a little shout out up there in the corner, all you guys that were there. Woo, yeah. They can't shout too loud. They're a little dehydrated. But because it was hot. It was a good day to give water. It was a good day to give water. But there was just a powerful, wonderful, loving spirit. And even more so, there's nothing more profound than to share the loving gospel message with someone who does not believe that they are loved by God. And God only has us to do that in this world. So I share that today with great love in my heart to say I was transformed and changed yesterday in profound ways because I was able to share the love of God. The seventh point for a progressive Christian church is that we strive to protect and restore the integrity of our earth. Many years before global warming became part of the conversation and the international dialogue, Marvin Gaye had great concern for the earth. In fact, this song first appeared on an album in 1971. In the 1970s, Marvin Gaye was a prophet for the world. He had great concern for the world. And in fact, this song is called the Ecology Song, right? Or Ecology. And the producer, Berry Gordy, would not let him name it that. He had to name it Mercy, Mercy Me. He believed that if we were, as a community, as a world, to take our resources and put them first in caring for the environment, our knowledge resources, our financial resources in caring for the environment, there we would get the answers for the future. Isn't that interesting? What if we had done that instead of plastic bags? Or what if we had done that? How different the world might look today. So I'm now calling Marvin Gaye the prophet of the garden, and perhaps we can pick up that mantle for him. And we can go forth in finding ways to care for creation, in putting our resources, our knowledge, and our abilities in caring for the incredible earth that God has blessed us with. Oh, mercy, mercy me. Every week we're encouraged to listen to the music that's going to be used in worship the following week. And I have to tell you, after learning that about Marvin Gaye and then listening to that song, it really changes some perspective for me and opens my mind to some new ideas. So we move to the last point of the day, and that is to commit to a path of lifelong learning, compassion, and selfless love. It's kind of interesting because it seems to me that our 8 points have just kind of made this circle, right? Because the first one is that we believe that following the path and teachings of Jesus can lead us to awareness and experience the sacredness and oneness and unity of all life. And then we commit to that path of lifelong learning with compassion and selfless love, following as Jesus told us to do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with God, to love our neighbor as ourselves, to follow him on that path of compassion, grace, goodness, love, until all the captives are free, until all the hungry are fed. I think it's pretty exciting when you think about it that we have been entrusted. We have been entrusted with this message. And God calls all of us to share it in lots of different circumstances. Have you ever heard of death cafes? There are these things out there called death cafes where people are coming together. The one in Indianapolis now meets online, but they met for a number of years. And death cafes are a group of people who come together to, it sounds a little morbid, but to talk about death, but how life is leading us to death. They're there to facilitate conversations about how dying informs and improves our living. An environment that encourages awareness and a variety of perspectives that can foster lifelong lessons. I think it's interesting that one group in Boston, Massachusetts was meeting, and they meet in a retirement home. And they found in these conversations about death that there were some things that they always wanted to do in life. And those things that they wanted to do in life were most often surrounding music. I always wanted to take a voice lesson. I wanted to learn how to play the guitar or saxophone or whatever it may be. Well, one of the members of the group knew there was a conservatory right up the street. She went and talked to the director of the conservatory, and the director and that woman came together with this amazing idea. First of all, the teachers started providing lessons to the folks who wanted to learn something. And then the people who had a few more years on them were invited to be present with kids who were in lessons and to encourage them in the way that they wished they had been encouraged as a kid. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a pretty amazing experience, and it could only come through conversation in something called a death cafe or just simply conversation. It's a reminder to us of the circle of life, of the circle of love. There are groups right here in this community that can encourage these conversations, and I want to say Phyllis Bybee's book study is one of them. Rich, amazing conversation goes on in that study on a regular basis, where people are encouraged to do things like go on field trips long after you graduated from school. Friends, these 8 points really do capture a bit of what it means to be part of the garden. I want to encourage everybody to continue to explore what does it mean to be an open, inclusive, Christ-like community where people from many paths gather to explore, engage, and seek inspiration to share in the transformation of the world. We must find ways to continue to share this good news because it is indeed good news, not just for some, but for everybody. Who are we missing here today, and how can we get them to the garden?
Not long ago, I asked some friends why they don't come to church. Here are a few reasons why. I can't go to church until I get my life together.
The garden is how I got my life together.
All they care about is your money.
The garden cares about me and not what's in my wallet.
Church is full of a bunch of hypocrites.
And at the garden, there's always room for one more.
One friend asked, is there some kind of dress code?
Yes, at the garden, we ask that you please wear clothes.
No shirt, no shoes, no service
I won't know anyone, and well, church just makes me nervous.
So I was nervous at first.
But then someone said hello to me, and I knew the garden was where I belonged.
I was welcome.
I'm welcome.
I'm welcome.
I'm welcome.
You are welcome.
I'm not sure I believe everything you believe.
Then you have a place here. And God welcomes you at the garden. God welcomes our doubt and questions.
If you knew me and what I have done, you wouldn't want me.
If you knew me,
And what I've done,
you wouldn't be worried.
You can come to the garden even if you were brought up
Catholic,
Baptist,
Buddhist,
Methodist,
Evangelical.
Southern Baptist.
Presbyterian,
nothing at all. See, at the garden, it's not about the answers.
it's about the questions.
It's not about religion.
it's about relationships.
So come to the garden where
You
You.
are welcome.
no previous experience is necessary.
Forgiveness.
Grace,
hope,
Love.
Inclusion,
Acceptance.
Are yours at the garden, and you are welcome as you are.
Enclose, please.
questioners,
Believers.
questioning believers.
You.
Are welcome.
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 Welcome to the garden.